All right, so everything happens on three different planes of reality, right? I'm about to break this down real quick and easy. Real quick and easy. You can go on about your day after this, right? There's a spiritual plane, there's a mental plane, and there's the physical plane. There's the spiritual plane, there's the mental plane, and there's the physical plane. If you grasp this, your whole life is going to do a whole, I think it's called a 180, right? When it just, I think it's a 180. It's going to do a whole shift, a whole turn. Now, on the spiritual plane, this plane you cannot physically see with your eyes, but you can feel. This is why people go to church. This is why people listen to gospel music. This is why people study the Bible, because they're trying to connect to that spiritual plane. The spiritual plane is basically what you believe about yourself. It is the host of your thoughts about God, your thoughts about self, your self-image, how you believe life is after death. The spiritual plane is that plane of existence that's going to host all of those energetic entities of what you think about life. You feel me? It connects you to the divine source, the higher God, right? Now, the mental plane is your thought life. Now, this is something that I low key have struggled with over time. I ain't gonna cap. The mental plane is where these thoughts are manifested, right? You receive up to 60,000 thoughts every single day, and whatever. And notice that these thoughts you cannot touch, right? Notice when you're sitting in silence, these thoughts are still going, bitch, because you're supposed to observe the thoughts, not identify with them, not internalize them. And I'm not gonna lie, you feel me? That has been something that I've been learning over and over and over, stronger and stronger though, no cap. So the mental plane is where thoughts manifest, and you begin to receive thoughts all over the place. No matter what environment you're in, no matter if you're trying to sleep, you can be at work, you can be anywhere, you start to receive these thoughts. Now, this mental plane is designed for you to create, but because we misuse it and it's influential to a lot of different things. For instance, when you're on social media, you start to receive thoughts of comparison, or thoughts of frustration, or thoughts of whatever you want to plug in, right. I'm trying to speak through this real quick. So that's the mental plane. The mental plane is supposed to be utilized for creation. The spiritual plane is supposed to be used for connection, like a divine connection. And then the physical plane is where you take action. Now, the physical plane is the most simplest plane, because most of us kind of maneuver through this plane mostly. So when you're in the physical plane, you take action. So let's say that it's time for you to get a new car. You feel me? I just got a Range Rover and everything, and I've been meditating with this on the spiritual plane. I've been connecting to the higher power, really trying to determine like how this car gonna come into my reality. On the mental plane, I started to water myself with thinking like, oh, I'm worthy of this car. I can afford this car. I'm gonna pay this car off, etc. And on the physical plane, you feel me? It might have manifested in me starting a business, or getting a second job, or hitting the lottery, or investing in, or withdrawing the stock, something of those nature. What the fuck? The enemy tried to sting me. So yeah, the physical plane is easiest. That's where you take action. Now, a lot of people operate on the physical plane alone, and they do this because that's all they're aware of. That's all they know of. That's all their consciousness has expanded to, is the physical plane. And when you operate on the physical plane alone, you're going to experience a lot more hardships, and you're not going to feel as elevated to navigate them, because you're not operating on all three planes, which is the purpose in this whole. You feel me? So the physical plane alone is not enough. The mental plane alone is not enough, because when you are, and a lot of people do this, a lot of business people, executive people do this. They combine the mental and the physical plane, and they intertwine it, and it works for them, but they don't handle stress well, or they don't have a connection to the source, or they're struggling in their relationships with their partner, or with their children, or you feel me, they drink too much because they don't have a divine connection guiding them to healthy outlets, and guiding them to a fulfilling life. The mental plane, the physical plane, it could, but it's not designed necessarily to create fulfilling life 100%, because you're missing that spiritual plane connection, right? So the spiritual plane alone, this is where you see all those gurus and mystics always be meditating, and tapping into their higher God, but they're not really living their desired reality. Like, they still are struggling day by day, penny by penny, because they might not be operating on the physical plane. So all that to say is, there are three levels and dimensions of reality. There are three different planes. When you master them, you begin to intertwine your identity with this creation called life. And then when you begin to connect to it, all things begin to work out for you, because you now have a clear conscience. You have a clear communication signal to these different planes. We set in the tone. Hey, hey.